r/AskReddit by Surreptitious. What is the scariest/creepiest thing you have seen/heard? One night after drinking and smoking at a pond near an elementary school, my friends decided to take a shortcut through the field and basketball court, like they normally do. As they cross the field they see some dude just standing around the basketball goal, not moving or anything. My friends thought this was kinda weird and tried whistling and calling out to get the guy's attention. No luck. As they reached the court they realized the kid was hanging just right off the ground. They run to my friend's house, which is right by the court exit, and call the cops. Turns up, the kid got in a fight with his mom over a cell phone, and got kicked out of the house. He was homeless for a few days and slept on the school benches. I didn't personally know him, but he was a year younger than us and we all went to that elementary school and high school. This was a few years ago on a night scuba dive. There were 8 of us in the group including our dive master and his assistant. We had just finished our dive and were gathered up in a circle ready to ascend and get out of the water when my dive master freezes. He takes his flashlight and pointing it outside our circle of divers he catches something circling us with the beam. Turns out it was a 12-foot-long great white shark. At this point half of the group are trying to keep the shark illuminated as it circles us and remarkably everyone stayed calm. The only things going through my mind were iterations of these two thoughts. Don't look like a yummy delicious fatty seal. And that I hope I taste terrible. My dive master gets our attention and slowly puts his thumb up and then makes an upward motion. We all begin to ascend and the shark kept with us until we were maybe 10 feet from the surface. Then it turned off into the darkness and was gone. I did not go back into the ocean for about a week after that. Only a week? I wouldn't have gone back into my own bathtub after that. Not creepy, but this is as scared as I've even been. I was fixing a jump belt on an old Gleaner K2 in the middle of the field, in the middle of the night, when my dog, a 110-pound lab, who's usually sniffing for birds when I stop, is standing still and letting out a growl I've never heard from him. I shine my almost dead flashlight where he's looking and I see 3 sets of eyes change quickly from a glow to a silhouette to coyotes. They're pretty harmless on their own, but in a pack they're relentless. I call for my dog and bolt for the cab, but he runs at them instead. I stood on the platform for what felt like hours as my dog tried to fight off the now 5 coyotes. I couldn't let my buddy die, so I grabbed the hammer and wrapped my jacket around my arm. The second I got close, one of them went for my leg and I offered my arm instead, which it gladly took and I swung down on its back with all my might. Second coyote, same as the first, grabs my arm and I swing at his back. The other 3 are switching between fighting and dragging my dog into the corn and like an idiot I throw the hammer at the pack with no effect. I kick the one doing the most dragging and he thankfully runs off. I picked up the hammer and swing at the one my dog doesn't have and stood back and watch my dog chase off the 5th. He came back bloody and limping, but no worse for wear. But even with the rabies shot, he started showing symptoms about a week later. Toughest thing I had to do to date was putting that dog down. I used to work in a trailer park for my parents. Quite often, people would start using methamphetamine, begin to fall behind on rent and get evicted. Whenever we evicted someone their trailer was usually too torn to shit to actually do anything useful with it. Essentially, to prevent having a pile of shit trailer in the middle of the park, we'd buy it from them and just tear it down. Anyway, the scary creepy part. Many of these occupants had children. More than half of all of the children's rooms I found had locks on the doors from the outside. Inside the children's rooms, it was always quite evident that the kids would sometimes be locked inside for days at a time, due to the bathroom corners that would sometimes appear. The doors on the insides of the rooms typically had scratch marks along the edge of the door and the door frame. Getting rid of all of the stuff inside before beginning demolition always frightened me. I was always afraid that I'd end up finding a dead child somewhere among the filth. It never happened, but the odds of it potentially happening were, in my opinion, quite high. The episode of Breaking Bad with Jesse and the redhead kid of those addicts breaks my heart because you just know there are real kids in those types of situations. One of the scariest things I ever heard was when I worked in retail. My store used to do layaway and that was where I worked. Right by the layaway counter we had 3 bathrooms, a men's multi-stall, a women's multi-stall and a family bathroom. Well, only the family bathroom had a door that locked, all the others had the push-pull swing door. I was in the back cleaning up and I thought I hear screaming, so I walked out front by the counter. I heard more screaming. I was not sure at first where it was coming from. I ran and checked the men's and women's bathroom and they were empty, and I still heard the crying and screaming. It was coming from the family bathroom. I banged on the door but the yelling, screaming, crying kept going on. It sounded like a child and I had no idea what was going on. I called for a manager because I had no way of getting in the door since it was locked. This whole time there is still crying, screaming, banging. After several attempts of trying to open the door, we called 911. We had no idea what was going on, but it didn't sound good. I think about 15 minutes at this point, although it felt forever. Then the sound check stopped. No more banging, crying, nothing. We banged on the door until the police came. When they finally did, they had to kick the door in since we had no key. As we all stood around and looked, and all we saw was blood all over the place. We were not really sure what happened at first, but the police told us to back up, and that is when they pulled out a lady and a child. A bloody child, maybe 3. We all just stood there in shock. The child was not moving. We thought he was dead because of all the blood. They took the lady away in handcuffs and the child to the hospital. We all had to give statements. Later my manager told me what happened. The just snapped. He wouldn't stop crying and she just had enough and did whatever she could to make him stop. He did live. I was sure he was dead, but he wasn't. She had just knocked him out from hitting him so hard. I watched in horror as this drunk seeming guy fell. Maybe it was on purpose, but I don't know. Onto a commuter rail track just as the train was coming. The sound sight of him getting run over, crunching, splattering, awful, has stayed with me for life as the scariest, brain scarring thing ever. I live in New York. I remember my dad telling me very seriously once, if you ever wait for the subway, make sure you're as far from the track as humanly possible until the train comes. A few months ago there was a rash of people pushing other people into the path of oncoming trains. I now know why I was told this. I always keep well clear off the tracks. I believe 99.9% of the people wouldn't do something horrible like pushing people on tracks, but there are always nutcases. Besides that, there's people running on tracks. What if they accidentally bump into you and you lose your balance? A few years back I rented an apartment from a friend of mine. He had recently bought it and had it completely renovated. He put it up for sale but couldn't find a buyer, so I offered to rent it in the meantime. After moving in I realized there was something wrong with the lady next door. She was about 45 but looked much older. She would sit up all night listening to Christian radio shows and talking loudly to someone. It got to the point where I couldn't sleep, so I went over to her place and asked her to keep it down. She opened her door and I got a quick peek. Her walks all had crosses painted on them in different colors, and words like Jesus and angels scribbled everywhere. The windows were painted black, letting no light in at all. It was damp, yellow stained 50-year-old carpets, dog shit and cockroaches everywhere. No dog though. I asked her to please keep it down. She just looked at me and shut the door. Then she turned up the radio even louder. The next night I had my GF staying over. I wake up in the middle of the night and see a shadow of a person next to the bed looking at us sleeping. I think I'm hallucinating, as I usually do in the dark when I'm sleepy, but then the shadow starts talking. It's my neighbor and she's holding something in her hand. She broke in during the night and who knows how long she stood there. You should lock your door at night, she says, and walks out. The next morning I hear someone making strange noises below my bedroom window. It's my neighbor talking to herself in tongue. She has a plastic bag in her hand with her rotting dead dog inside. It's hot as hell outside and I can smell death from the bag. At this point I'm scared shitless. She's obviously very insane. I go upstairs and knock on another person's door and ask what the hell is going on. The guy is as scared as me. Apparently she broke into his apartment one evening as well while he was watching TV with his kids. He got up from the couch to get a snack only to find her behind the couch staring at him holding a power drill. Now I know what was in her hand. At this stage I'm basically pooping myself. I call the cops and they know all about her. Apparently she is a violent schizo and she hasn't taken her meds. But they can't force her or enter her apartment without her permission because she owns it. The only thing they can do is get her when she goes outside. I sit up for the next 2 days waiting for her to run out of cigarettes. When I hear her leave at 2 AM to go across the road to the 7-Eleven, I call the cops. They have 3 cars and a special van over in less than 2 minutes. They restrain her and throw her in the van and drive off to some institution, and in less than a minute it's like she was never there. I never see her again. Still have nightmares about her looking at me in my sleep. Thanks for watching. PLZ like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day.